Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Season 1, Episode 5. It's called The Enemy Within. Full spoilers for the episode. So the plot of this one is that there's a malfunction,
Yeah.
and when Kirk is beamed back up to the Enterprise, he is... Well, at first it seems like he's copied. There's a duplicate, there's an evil version created, but it quite quickly turns around and you sort of sense that he's actually split in two, that half of his personality is in one version of Kirk and the other half is in the other, because the second one that we see is kind of violent, very red Kryptonite-esque.
It is something that has been done in virtually every genre show since.
Pretty much, which is why I think as a modern audience watching this, you know exactly what it is before the characters do.
I mean, you can pretty much think of any TV show that's, sci-fi, fantasy, that sort of stuff that's been more than 5 seasons. They've probably done this.
Yeah. I want to point out as well, this is the second time in 5 episodes that I have described something as red kryptonite. But they both have this thing where, like, the one Kirk is very... Oh, he just acts on his impulses and just does what he wants. He has no compassion, no inhibitors in place to control his feelings or thoughts, and that's why he seems to be violent and very selfish and just does what he wants. Whereas the other Kirk, of course, is the compassionate one, but he loses the strength to actually make difficult decisions, and that's kind of something that happens throughout the episode. It's an interesting thing to tackle, especially at the time. I can't imagine there was a lot of stories that tackled this kind of idea, that our negative side is just as important to us overall.
Yeah, I feel, at least not on TV. I feel like there's a lot of literature that explores this duality of good and evil.
Yeah,
but especially on TV, definitely it was ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was very much an examination of sort of the benefits of that evil side and why you need to have balance between both. You can't just be completely happy and do things to be nice. You have to have a rough edge. It's kind of like back to that whole thing where if someone, like, you have to be nice to people, but you can't let them take advantage of you. You have to have that harsh part of you that steps in and goes, no, stop taking the piss. Don't abuse my kindness, you prick. So that's kind of what it is. It's that thing that steps in, especially as a captain in this kind of scenarios. You the ability to make those harsh decisions, because you're dealing with decisions that will lead to people's deaths, that will lead to other dramatic things. So, did you enjoy this episode then, episode 5?
Mostly, yeah. I feel like it's a little harder to judge because it has been done so many times since, and the formula has been evolved upon over the years. So this is a very bare bones version of that story.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. It's very, very straightforward. Obviously, it plays with the idea that we think that it's just, there's an evil Kirk. It's not just that it's part of him. Yeah. And then as that goes on, it develops. I like the episode a lot. I think it works quite well because I like the exploration of that stuff. But what also adds to it is that there's this whole countdown going on because the transporter is malfunctioning. They can't beam up Sulu and a couple of... They're not actually red shirts, but I'll just call them red shirts.
For all intents and purposes, they are.
So Sulu and a couple of red shirts are still down on the planet that they're at. And when it gets to night time on this planet, when the sun goes down, it gets to like ridiculous, silly low temperatures where they're going to freeze to death if they don't get them up, but they can't transport them up. So we get these scenes of them in the planet like freezing and try to like huddle together, and they're using their lasers to heat up the rocks.
Amusingly, it's something that can only be done in these earlier episodes because of they haven't invented the shuttles yet in the production.
That's true, actually. Yeah, this is a plot that at least this part of the plot would be completely null and void.
They just send a shuttle down.
Yeah. It's actually kind of a weird oversight that they didn't think of that at this point.
Yeah, it seems so obvious in hindsight.
Yeah, but hey, it'd be the low tech backup when you can't just beam things up and down. But and what that does is it gives the entire episode a countdown where everything has this ticking time bomb kind of sense. Where if they don't solve this, if they don't get through this problem, the people on the planet are going to die.
Yeah.
So it gives everything this sense of ticking down, and that gives everything a good sense of urgency, where it always feels like the episode's propelling forward, and that's really good. This is also the one where we get a dog in a ridiculous little furry costume with a horn.
Yes.
What did you think of the dog in the furry costume with the horn?
I've seen worse dog costumes.
Yeah, it's fine. It's kind of goofy, sure, now, but you just kind of laugh at it.
It's one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah. But, no. So, obviously, throughout the episode, Kirk's constantly fighting with himself, and he tries to trust his evil side, his harsher side, and it sort of blows up in his face, and the evil side even tries to take control of the bridge, because they have him locked up in the infirmary for quite a chunk of the episode once they realise what's going on.
And to their credit, they realise fairly quickly. But there was a bit where it seemed like they'd noticed, and like they seemed like they'd figured it out, but then they hadn't. It was when Scotty's telling them about the dog, and they're like, oh, it's this opposite, it's duplicated, it's that's when we learned what's going on, and it feels like they've figured out what's happening as well, because obviously there's been the strange occurrences of Kirk being in multiple places. He says he hasn't been doing these things, the brandy and so on, and it feels like they'd figured it out, and then the next scene it's like, oh, what could possibly be going on?
So yeah, evil Kirk gets up to a lot of mischief, and it becomes a lot more interesting because it is actually Kirk, and it's actually stuff that he it harkens back to a few episodes ago when we said Kirk kind of has this longing for having like a married life, and he's chosen this life, but there's still like a want in there for it, because he kind of goes after Yeoman, and he aggressively goes after Yeoman.
It gets a little bit rapey.
It gets a little bit rapey, and he tries to sort of force himself on her, and she scratches him and runs for the hills, as it were. And this creates this weird tension between them. You see it again at the end, and she kind of like accepts that it wasn't him.
But she knows that base desire is in there somewhere, and he's just suppressing it.
And he's kind of acknowledging it as well. The look he gives her at the end really felt like, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but let's get on with it.
Just move on.
Let's move on with life, yes. And because even when we'll just call him Evil Kirk for lack of a better term, Evil Kirk sort of like, he knocks good Kirk out, and he pretends to be regular Kirk, and he pretends he goes to, and he's like, oh, Yeoman, I'll see you in your place later. That was an interesting scene for me, because one, it's very sinister, because we know it's actually Evil Kirk, and that he's luring her into a trap essentially, but it never gets followed up on. Like, no one ever, like, because everything's solved before we get to that point where this would happen. And I wonder if, like, if that's added into her whole like look at the end, where she's realised what that was. Yeah. Because it doesn't get brought up in a very straightforward way. There's no direct reference to it or direct acknowledgement.
No, there's no dialogue saying that. Oh, well, this happened.
Yeah. So
does Kirk at the end, when he's put back together, does he have the memories of both halves, like what they both did? Like, would he know that that's taken place? Because obviously it seems like the good half of him is certainly the dominant side.
Yeah.
And that's the Kirk that we know for the most part. But obviously these occurrences took place, like that conversation there, and I'm wondering if he knows that happened.
I would guess he did. If I'm going again back to that look that he shares with her at the end, when he is fixed... Yeah. I would say he does. I'd say he remembers, and there's that feeling of shame, because even though it kind of wasn't him, it kind of was. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's more interesting if he remembers. Yeah, it gives it that confliction within him. Hence the title of the episode, The Enemy Within. It's part of who he is, and he can't change that. But as McCoy constantly brings up, everyone's got this evil side in them. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to... Yeah, it's human nature. Yeah, it's controlling it that makes it strong and all the rest of it. But so that was interesting. I think that was mainly my takeaway from this, is that it was kind of an analysis of Kirk's character, and the way that as soon as he realizes something's not going right, he even tells Spock, like, if I start to not get something right again, if I get indecisive, you got to tell me. You got to tell me, possibly take command, that kind of thing. Because it was that great scene where he's on the comms down to Sulu, and he's just trying to, like we're getting things done, we're working on it, and Sulu's joking about passing down a long rope with coffee on the end of it so they can heat up a bit. And at one point, Kirk just like freezes and he can't respond. Yeah, he can't talk. Doesn't know what to do. And Spock steps in, and again, it's just that kind of establishing that kind of friendship in there. You know, interesting. I think Spock and McCoy have this great moment in the episode.
It's when so after they've tried to fix the transporter and the dog died, and McCoy wants to do the autopsy and get to the bottom of whether or not it was just shock of it going back together, or if it was something else in the transporter that killed it. And they have this bit where Kirk can't make up his mind. He just doesn't know what to do, if he should risk it or if he should wait and play it safe. And you get this moment where obviously the whole episode is about this duality of him, but this is a wider part where Spock and McCoy literally stand on either side of him and debate two sides. So they completely personify it. What's really interesting, I find, is Spock is the one who just goes with his instinct and just leaps for it.
It's the emotional response more from
Spock.
Yeah.
Whereas McCoy is like, no, let's take time, let's think about this, let's figure it out. And I think that was really interesting for me.
I think my only hole that I would pick in that argument, and I like the idea that you've got both of them debating over the choice. I don't necessarily think that either one would be the evil Kirk's choice, if that makes sense.
No, it's not. It's not good and evil, that one. It's just two sides to oppose.
Don't get me wrong.
Logic it
fits in with the theme of the alley throughout the episode. It's just I don't think one represents what evil Kirk would be thinking in that scene.
Not quite to that extent. It's more instinct and logic, which I suppose to a degree is, because they talk about how this compassionate Kirk has all the knowledge of, like wisdom and rational thoughts, whereas evil Kirk's much more base desires and instincts.
The funny thing is I think both of them are coming from a place of emotion in a weird way, because even McCoy's like, no, I don't want to risk it because I don't want Kirk to die, but by doing that he's going to let the men on the planet die.
Yeah. Whereas
Spock's like, no, we have to risk it or the people on the planet will die. But that's a very, like, no, we should save them. He's taking that leap, like you say. And which almost is, again, Spock kind of growing. There's hints of that emotion and there's hints of that humanity.
Yeah. No, I really like that scene. Just the way it was positioned with them on either side, having this debate, and Kirk just stuck in the middle, sat down, not knowing what to do. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, obviously, Shatner's doing overtime on this episode because he's playing two roles.
Yeah.
And he's doing the good, doing the evil, and he seems to be having fun letting loose with the evil stuff, which is...
Yeah, the only bit where he went a little bit maybe too over the top with it was where he's screaming, "I'm the captain," or whatever it is, into the mirror.
See, I like that though, because it is so over the top.
It is so over the top, but it might be just a touch too far compared to everything else in the episode.
Do you know we've talked about before how he's got the regular gold shirt and he's got that green shirt that he sometimes wears? It was used really effectively in this one where they had regular Kirk change into the green shirt, so we could instantly tell for the longest time who was who easily.
Until it was supposed to be a dilemma for the characters as well.
Yeah, so that was a good,
clever,
smart little choice. Actually, Joe said I really like, mainly because it's a part of the ship we hadn't seen before. It's when Kirk and Spock are searching for evil Spock, and they're down looking at sort of the machinery down in the lower decks.
Yeah, and the engineering.
And evil Kirk's up top like Spider-Man, just sort of like hovering like on top of the
just crawling around
machinery. Yeah, I like that stuff. That was just a nice bit of sort of cheap and cheery suspense, I'll call that. Speaking of cheap and cheery tension, I want to talk about the moment where they actually fix it and they beam both Kirks down. And by the way, there was one or two moments where you could tell, okay, we'll get away with this body double for the second Kirk because it's it's going to look like this on a standard definition TV signal. Yeah. Watching it in 1080p, it's like, oh yeah, that's not Shatner. Yeah. Thanks for that.
It's one of those things where they didn't think they'd ever have to pay that much attention to it. They never thought it would be noticed. And, you can't blame them too much for that.
So, to their credit, though, there is a couple of shots where both of them appear in the frame at the same time, and it looks fine. So I don't get me wrong, it's not a super difficult effect. It's just one of those things that anyone who gets an effects program can sort of learn to do. But it's, again, 1960s, they're tough stuff. But, so that was cool. But yeah, the moment where they actually, like, beam them both down and then beam them back up to see if it's fixed. I like how, how they always have that thing where they're frozen before they start moving because of the transition between the shots. I love that Shatner holds it for like an extra 5 seconds before he starts giving commands to let us know he's okay.
Yeah.
He holds it for an obscene amount of time.
So actually, that's just reminded me, there's another bit I liked. When we see evil Kirk arrive in the transporter, just, a little bit later, he is a mirror of the original Kirk, where the first Kirk comes up, he's facing forwards, and the second one he's facing backwards. And he does these like backward steps as well, and this is before we know it's a mirror, and we're assuming it's just a duplicate. So I quite like that.
Just a subtle little indication of what's to come.
Yeah.
No, it's good. That is a solid episode. I think it, like I say, has that sense of urgency because they're constantly, these people down there are going to die if we don't get this fixed, and it just keeps climbing to there. Meanwhile, you've got all this character stuff with Kirk and exploring that, and so that's solid episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
So yeah, let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. It helps us out a lot. This was a day later than it typically would be because internet was out for a couple of days and it pushed everything back. So bear with us, and we should be back to our regular day next week. But thank you very much. Like and subscribe and all that stuff helps us out a lot. Keep watching cheesy old TV, and we'll see you next time.